Picture a London not defined by its grand monuments or the hushed reverence of historic institutions, but by the pulsating energy of its urban heartlands in the mid-20th century. Specifically, transport yourself to Notting Hill in the 1960s, a district then far from its current polished image. This was a crucible, a vibrant, sometimes volatile, melting pot where the post-war fabric of British society was being reshaped by the arrival of new communities. Waves of immigrants, predominantly from the Caribbean and West Africa, disembarked with their hopes, their heritage, and their distinct rhythms, seeking a new life in the mother country. They brought with them not just their families and their aspirations, but also their unique cultural blueprints, which would subtly, yet profoundly, begin to re-engineer the very essence of everyday life in their adopted home. For many, football was more than just a pastime. It was a universal language, a shared passion that transcended linguistic barriers and cultural differences. Yet, the game as played on the rain-swept pitches of England often reflected a certain pragmatic stoicism. Robust tackles, direct play, an emphasis on strength and aerial prowess. It was a game of graft, often devoid of the spontaneous flair that characterized football in other parts of the world. But within the labyrinthine streets and cramped public spaces of Notting Hill, something transformative was beginning to stir. A quiet revolution played out on patched-up asphalt and worn-down grass. Have you ever witnessed a football player whose movements seem less like sport and more like an extension of music? Someone who appears to dance with the ball, weaving through challenges with an almost supernatural grace, leaving opponents bewildered in their wake? Consider those moments when a single touch, a sudden swivel, or an audacious dribble elicits an audible gasp from the crowd, a collective recognition of pure, unadulterated artistry. These are the moments that elevate the beautiful game beyond mere competition, transforming it into a spectacle of individual brilliance. But where do such expressions of flair truly originate, especially in a footballing nation often celebrated more for its grit than its creative genius? The conventional narrative of English football, often focused on its industrial roots and tactical discipline, frequently overlooks the fertile ground where such vibrant, unscripted chapters were first penned. This unfolding narrative in Notting Hill wasn't about the structured drills of an academy or the rigid formations dictated by seasoned coaches. It was about improvisation, the innate ability to react and create in the moment, a style born from the informal pitches where the rules were fluid and the only referee was the collective spirit of the players. It was a game infused with the vibrant echoes of calypso and reggae, the rhythmic pulse of carnival, and the indomitable spirit of a community forging its identity in a new land. The sounds of steel drums, the intoxicating aroma of Caribbean food, and the infectious energy of street parties weren't just background noise. They were integral components of a burgeoning cultural tapestry that would inevitably spill onto the makeshift football pitches, redefining what was possible with a ball at one's feet. This was not just a local phenomenon, confined to the back alleys and dusty parks of West London. Its profound influence would ripple outward, subtly yet undeniably, planting the seeds for a more expressive, more artistic, and ultimately, more captivating brand of football within the very heart of English sporting culture, challenging preconceived notions of what a proper English player should embody. Consider, for a moment, the fundamental shift dictated by the urban landscape itself. Unlike the expansive, manicured pitches of traditional English football, the street game in Notting Hill unfolded on cramped, irregular surfaces, cobbled alleys, asphalt playgrounds, or even small patches of parkland hemmed in by brick walls. This environmental constraint wasn't a hindrance. It was a catalyst for innovation. Players were compelled to master close quarters control, to develop an almost preternatural awareness of their surroundings. The ball rarely left the ground for long, as aerial duels were impractical and often resulted in lost possession or broken windows. Consequently, the emphasis naturally gravitated towards intricate footwork, rapid changes of direction, and the subtle art of the decoy, fostering a style where agility and precision superseded brute force or long, speculative passes. Furthermore, the very nature of street football, unburdened by league tables, official referees, or the watchful eyes of professional scouts, cultivated an atmosphere of uninhibited experimentation. There was no fear of making a mistake, no coach to admonish a failed trick. This freedom encouraged players to attempt daring maneuvers, to develop a repertoire of feints and flicks that would be deemed too risky or flamboyant in more structured environments. It was a laboratory of spontaneous creativity, where individual flair was not merely tolerated but celebrated, becoming a currency of respect among peers. This cultural emphasis on self-expression, deeply rooted in the backgrounds of the Caribbean and African communities, manifested as a joyous, almost theatrical approach to the game, where the spectacle of a dazzling dribble was often as valuable as a goal. Beyond mere skill acquisition, this unique environment served as an informal academy, nurturing a distinct breed of player. The relentless pursuit of possession in tight spaces honed an acute sense of spatial awareness and peripheral vision. Imagine navigating a crowded market. Every step, every glance is calculated. Similarly, these young players developed an innate ability to perceive passing lanes and anticipate defensive movements even before they fully materialized. This constant high-intensity engagement with the ball at their feet, often for hours on end, without the interruption of formal drills, ingrained a level of technical proficiency and ball-handling dexterity that was rare in the more rigid coaching paradigms of the time. It was learning by doing, a self-organizing system where mastery emerged from endless repetition and peer-driven challenges. This distinctive approach to football consequently began to shape an entirely new archetype of player. Instead of the archetypal robust center forward or the unyielding defender, Notting Hill fostered the emergence of the playmaker, the nimble midfielder who could unlock defenses with a single pass, the trickster whose evasive movements left opponents bamboozled, or the maestro who orchestrated the flow of the game with exquisite ball control. These were individuals who prioritized touch, vision, and ingenuity over raw power, demonstrating a profound understanding of the game's creative possibilities. Their skills, honed in the crucible of urban playgrounds, represented a radical departure from the prevailing footballing philosophy, hinting at a future where technical artistry would gain greater prominence. Another profound aspect was the direct translation of cultural movement into sporting technique. The fluidity of dance forms, the rhythmic body control inherent in musical expression, and the improvisational nature of street performance found a natural outlet on the football pitch. This wasn't just about music being played nearby. It was about a deeply ingrained cultural understanding of movement, rhythm, and personal expression being applied to the game. When you observed these players, their movements often possessed a kinetic elegance, a natural flow that set them apart. Their dribbles weren't just functional. They were often beautiful, embodying a seamless blend of purpose and aesthetic appeal. This fusion of cultural movement with athletic endeavor produced a uniquely captivating and effective style. Ultimately, the vibrant, unscripted football of Notting Hill, born from necessity and infused with cultural vitality, began to percolate into the broader English football landscape. It demonstrated that technical proficiency, agility, and creative flair were not mere embellishments but essential components of a truly effective and entertaining game. This underground movement, largely unseen by mainstream media in its nascent stages, laid critical groundwork. It subtly challenged existing perceptions of what a successful footballer looked like, paving the way for a more diverse and technically gifted generation of players who would eventually grace the professional pitches, forever altering the stylistic DNA of English football. Drawing these myriad threads together, we begin to perceive not just isolated phenomena, but a complex organic alchemy at play. It was as if the very constraints of the urban environment, far from limiting expression, acted as a crucible, forcing a distillation of pure skill and inventive thought. The confined spaces, often seen as restrictive, paradoxically liberated a form of play that prioritized ingenuity and an intimate relationship with the ball. This was a departure from the more expansive, often more rigid, approaches to the game prevalent elsewhere, forging a new paradigm where close control and rapid decision-making became the hallmarks of excellence. This unique crucible was further enriched by the vibrant cultural tapestry brought by the new residents. Imagine the subtle interplay, the inherent rhythm of dance and music deeply embedded in the communal life, translating effortlessly into the kinetic poetry of a dribble, a feint, a sudden burst of acceleration. It was a fusion where the body's natural inclination towards fluid movement, honed by generations of cultural expression, found a profound new canvas on the makeshift pitch. The resulting style was less about brute force and more about an almost balletic grace, a spontaneous improvisation that echoed the very spirit of the streets and the collective joy of shared experience. This infusion transcended mere technique. It imbued the act of playing with an emotional depth, a visible joy in the execution of skill that resonated far beyond the confines of the game itself. What emerged from this synthesis was not merely a collection of skilled individuals, but a distinct philosophy of play, an unwritten manifesto for how the game could be approached. It was a testament to the power of self-organization and the innate human capacity for creativity when unburdened by prescriptive instruction. The absence of formal coaching structures, often viewed as a deficit, instead fostered an environment where experimentation was not just permitted but actively encouraged. Every touch, every pass, every audacious trick became a learning experience, a continuous feedback loop driven by the immediate reactions of peers and the sheer delight of mastery. This informal academy, operating outside the established sporting institutions, cultivated an intuitive understanding of the game's dynamic flow, a heightened spatial awareness, and an almost telepathic connection between players. Reflecting on this journey so far, one might now appreciate how these seemingly localized developments were, in fact, laying down crucial foundations that would ripple outward, subtly yet profoundly altering the broader landscape of a national sport. The vibrant, unscripted dialogues held on these improvised pitches began to speak a new language, one of flair, technical artistry, and individual brilliance, challenging the prevailing narrative of what constituted effective football. It was a quiet revolution, a gradual re-education of the eye and the mind, demonstrating that power and grit, while valuable, were only part of the equation. The seed of a more expressive, more captivating style was being planted, destined to blossom in unexpected ways. As you consider the cumulative effect of these intertwined factors, the adaptive brilliance born of urban constraint, the liberating power of informal play, and the deep cultural currents that infused every movement, the path forward for the game itself takes on a new dimension. This convergence, far from being a mere footnote in sporting history, represents a significant chapter in the evolution of athletic expression, a testament to how creativity and innovation can flourish from the most unexpected origins. The legacy is not just about specific players or memorable moments, but about a fundamental shift in perception, a widening of the very definition of what is possible on the football pitch, inviting a deeper appreciation for the artistry inherent in the beautiful game. The journey through Notting Hill's street football scene reveals more than just a localized sporting phenomenon. It unearths a profound truth about the organic interplay between culture, environment, and human ingenuity. What transpired on those improvised pitches was not merely an adaptation of an existing sport, but a vibrant reimagining, a testament to how the constraints of urban life, when met with a rich cultural heritage, can paradoxically liberate new forms of expression. The narrow lanes and concrete surfaces, far from stifling creativity, compelled players to transcend conventional approaches, fostering a mastery of close control, quick thinking, and an almost intuitive understanding of spatial dynamics. This was a form of football born of necessity, yet elevated by an inherent desire for artistic expression, transforming limitations into springboards for innovation. The essence of this transformation lay in the seamless integration of deeply ingrained cultural rhythms and sensibilities. The pulsating beats of reggae and calypso, the fluid movements of dance, the improvisational spirit of carnival. These were not just external influences, but fundamental components woven into the very fabric of how the game was conceived and executed. Players moved with a kinetic grace, their dribbles mirroring the intricate steps of a dance, their passes echoing the call and response of a musical jam session. This was football as a performance, a celebration of individual flair and collective harmony, where the audacious trick and the mesmerizing feint were as much a part of the spectacle as the goal itself. It was a joyful defiance of rigid structures, an insistence on infusing the beautiful game with a vibrant, unbridled spirit that resonated deeply with the communities who played it. This grassroots revolution, bubbling up from the unheralded corners of West London, subtly yet powerfully reshaped the broader narrative of English football. It demonstrated, unequivocally, that the game could be played with more than just grit and physicality. It could be an arena for exquisite technical artistry, for imaginative playmaking, and for a brand of individual brilliance that captivated audiences and dismantled defensive lines with elegant precision. The young talents nurtured on these makeshift pitches, often overlooked by the established academies of the era, were, in fact, the quiet architects of a new aesthetic, laying the groundwork for a more diverse and technically astute generation of players who would eventually grace the professional stages. Their influence, initially an unseen current, gradually permeated the national consciousness, challenging preconceptions and expanding the very definition of what an English footballer could embody. The legacy of Notting Hill street football, therefore, extends far beyond the boundaries of the sport itself. It stands as a compelling metaphor for the transformative power of cultural exchange and the profound impact of immigrant communities on their adopted homelands. It reminds us that innovation often blossoms not in the polished boardrooms or the sterile training grounds, but in the vibrant, informal spaces where diverse traditions converge and are allowed to flourish organically. It is a testament to the idea that true creativity often emerges from the periphery, from the voices and movements that initially defy the mainstream, eventually enriching and redefining the very core of a nation's cultural identity. As we reflect on this remarkable chapter, we are invited to consider where similar unheralded revolutions might be brewing today, in countless communities around the globe. The story of Notting Hill is an enduring reminder that genius is not confined to grand stadiums or official institutions. It resides in the everyday interactions, in the collective spirit, and in the unyielding passion of individuals who, against all odds, find ways to express themselves with unparalleled beauty and ingenuity. The true practice, perhaps, is not just about mastering a skill, but about cultivating an environment where such spontaneous, culturally rich expressions can continue to thrive, forever enriching the tapestry of human endeavor. It encourages us to look deeper, to listen more closely, and to celebrate the profound contributions that emerge from the most unexpected corners, forever shaping our understanding of what is possible.